Chris, let me know when we are live.
That is just general.
So it's funny, the ones on the legislative, using my stepmother's shoe, I just picture of the egg. Class.
Say hi.
Right, it's not official yet.
Good job, Klaus. Thank you.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Mike, can you please call roll?
Ms. Benecki.
Present.
Dr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Essenclair.
Here.
Ms. Hope. Ms. Hollingworth.
Here.
Ms. Paoli. Mr. Seidel.
Here.
Vice President Hochgirdle.
Here.
President Crooked.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mike, could you please read the statement concerning open public meetings?
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 12th, 2022, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. A written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were emailed to the Courier Post and the Retrospect newspaper.
Okay, we'll start today with student commendations.
What you want to introduce? So, we have Ms. Durrell couldn't be here today. She's actually moving to Austin tomorrow, so she couldn't be here. But we have our fifth grade team from Tatum. Why don't you explain the project and tell them we're here to celebrate and do some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, we stand over here, otherwise we're
Oh,
going
that's right.
We always do it over there.
So yeah, I'm Mike DeVlotis. I'm a 5th grade writing teacher at JFT.
I'm Erin Miller. I'm a special education teacher at Commendations.
So the 5th grade writing team, we put together a seeking positive change, where students could pick a topic of their choice, something they're passionate about, and different types of audiences from parents, teachers, admin, the mayor, Mr. Klaus himself, and hope that we get a response. We had many responses. The student we wanted to recognize today, Catherine Watson, wrote to our 46th president about the importance of recycling, and to our very pleasant surprise, we got a response to that. So we're here today to recognize Catherine for not just her hard work, but all the passion that she brought to the project. So let's give a big round of applause to Catherine.
Two letters.
Correct.
So Catherine will get us to take a picture of the problem.
Don't want to photo bomb accident.
Congratulations, Catherine.
Congratulations, Catherine.
So who are the other two? We had 2 other students who also
Yes.
get responses, but they couldn't be here tonight because one is in a play, I believe, and one is already down the street. So it's not who they were, this is also.
Yeah, so we also want to recognize George Falco and Jack Gibson, who also received letters from our president.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next up, we'll have Charlie Webb's student representatives report.
All right. As always, we ended the school year with finals. We used the same schedule as midterms, which was the Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday schedule. Except for this time we did it in reverse. So we started with 8th period, worked our way down to 1st period. And same as the midterms, everyone really likes the schedule. No complaints. In general, June was a pretty good month. Arts in the Courtyard kicked it off on June 3rd, and it was awesome. I mean, we had things from the French national anthem to like drinking lemons straight out of the lemon. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. We concluded the month with graduation, which also ran smoothly. The peer leaders had their training trip this month, and they're excited to be back in the fall to kick off freshman orientation. This year, freshman orientation was moved to a lunch period instead of its own class period, as it's always been in the past. And after experimenting with this format, we've decided to return to having peer leader during a class period, or freshman orientation to a class period, after receiving some constructive advice from peer leaders and freshmen as well. Overall, it was a great school year. It's crazy to think that we were wearing masks earlier this year. So we're all just super excited to be kind of back to normal now. Students seem to really enjoy the new schedule format this year with the mixed block days and the 8 period days. And we're excited to continue this format next year. And of course, everyone's excited for the new bathrooms as well.
Great, thank
That's
you.
all I got.
So are you excited for your summer to start?
Very excited. Yeah. I mean, I'll be stuck here for most of it. But
Yeah, well,
You're actually the last functioning student this year, right?
yeah, that's right.
How about that?
Well, thank you so much for reporting and for updating us. Okay, we don't have any presentations tonight, so we're going to move right on to our curriculum committee reports. Every time I say, I think I'm gonna need readers soon. This is printed small, but it's only a matter of time. We had a curriculum meeting on June 15th. We talked about the math program. I know that Mr. Klaus is going to talk a little bit more about this later, but I'll talk briefly about it. We discussed Desmos in the secondary level, and that has been something that's been well supported by teachers, and they're very interested in it. And it's gone well so far. They've used it quite a bit in some of the classes already. For next year, we're going to be talking about, he's on the agenda to be approved today, Dr. Malo, who is a math consultant, and his contract position will be paid for with ESSER funds. And he's going to be coaching in classrooms and really focusing on the pedagogy that goes along with math to strengthen the math curriculum. And I think the teachers are really excited about this. A lot of it'll be really great to have someone boots on the ground looking at our math program and seeing how it works day to day and in function. And so we're excited about his position. And we talked about transition plans because as we know, the chief academic officer position is no longer, that position's been abolished. And one of the new positions we're almost bringing back, I think it was here years ago, predates me, was a teacher coordinator for professional development. And this position is similar to what we've had before, very grassroots in the classroom. It'll be someone who's been a teacher or been in the field, and it'll be more hands-on, and that'll be planning professional development as it's integral to instruction. And one of the things about professional development, it's so important when you're spending money for funding professional development that you see it go down to the student level. And this is really one of the things that we have all these people in place to really make sure that our students are going to get the full impact of the professional development for our teachers, because as we all know, some coaching is helpful. I know that I could always use it. All right, and we also talked about the ELA curriculum review cycle, something that we developed a few years ago based on CUSAC, was that we really need to cycle in revising our curriculums. And so we have the ELA is up next year. There's that review cycle has a core team of 10 people, and I believe those stipends are on the agenda also to be approved. Questions?
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing, because I know in the past what has been going on with the math curriculum, and just want to clarify that it's not the math itself that is changing, but rather we're looking at programs that give the teachers the best tools to get that across. And I think that continuing to look until we find a tool that really resonates and that we believe is the best tool, I'm so behind that.
And one of the things that we had a lot of discussions on the math curriculum committee about, and I know some of us have had long discussions on this, is that when we talk about curriculum, and that is what you're teaching, right? But aside from that is the pedagogy and how is it being taught. And one of the reasons we're bringing Dr. Malone in is because, am I pronouncing his name correctly? Is because we really want to see that the instruction, like for example, how feedback is given, that it's given timely and that the students can learn from it and grow from it. And really, I think that is all how we're going to see a stronger, performance from the students. Because like anything, like when you give them, like you could give me a power saw and it wouldn't be pretty. But if you taught me and you coached me and you helped me, I'm sure I could, I don't know, solve something. It was a bad analogy. But I'm sure I could cut something in half.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The program is not the curriculum.
Yeah.
Right? The programs are tools that you use to put the professionals to put the curriculum in place and teach the best way they can. And as you said, it's not just what you're teaching, but how you teach it. How does it look like when you deliver? How do you really get students engaged? What student engagement mean? All those things. So they're the things we're focusing on.
And to refresh, the ESSER funds are part of the COVID government federal assistance
Yes.
Yes.
batch.
So it doesn't come out of our normal budget, which is an added, right? Yeah. Which is an added bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so many.
Will the coach be like going to all different levels of schooling, or is he focusing mainly on one area?
Probably
Really good
primarily
question,
middle and high, we will be working on.
Okay.
Since we're sitting elementary pilot a little bit, we'll be more focused on that. And then once the elementary pilot is completed,
Okay.
focus there. So it'll be
Gotcha.
stages.
Yeah, we're extending the pilot for the elementary math because there wasn't a program that stood out. And what we don't want to do is invest in a program that isn't going to be what we really want in the long run. So we felt as though it's better to continue to make sure that we're buying a product that we really like, that the teachers are behind. So the elementary will continue piloting a little more extensively next year so that, and they're all great programs. We're only looking at the best programs, but then it's a matter of what is best for us. And that's something where we're not quite ready at the elementary level to make that decision. Okay. All right, Dave, finance and facilities?
Finance and facilities, we met on June 21st, and we discussed 7 items, or 6 items. So first one was summer paint crew. We've been talking about the paint crew. This is a way to get people involved in the district to help paint it during the summer so we can keep kind of progress going. Last year, we hired a painter, who was part of the crew, and this person's now going to be supplemented in the summer by a crew of 10. This will be 3 teachers and 7 current seniors who just graduated, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah. So they will start working with the painter to paint spaces starting on July 11th until we're out of paint or funds, whichever comes first, or the school starts. All right, so they'll just keep painting along. It's a never-ending job, so they can keep going for a long time. Bathroom renovations is the next thing we talked about. We were all excited because the bid openings were scheduled for yesterday, where we would have accepted the lowest qualified bid. It's not always low bid, it's lowest qualified bid to do the work. And the bids were structured to be per building. Some buildings the bid we could accept. Some buildings, maybe if they were all over budget, we'd have to skip a building. Mike wants to give us, and sorry, Charlie.
So, Mr. Webb, I was excited.
I don't like the sound of this.
But, I mean,
Oh.
I was pretty prepared to come to the board tonight to actually reject bids, just because of the environment, with the cost of materials, lead times for materials. Lead times wasn't really a concern, given what we had specifications on the architect record laid out for us. But unfortunately, we did not receive any bids for any of the buildings, bathroom renovations. So, why? I really can't pinpoint why this is the time to bid for a summer job. If we were to accept bids tonight, we could have things mobilized for a project like this by the end of next week. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So we won't be working on any this summer. Doesn't mean we're not doing this ever again. We do plan to go out to bid again, strategize, maybe think about if we need to rework our bid specifications at all. I don't think that's the case, but perhaps we go out way earlier to bid, probably like in the winter time, to give contractors a lot more time to fill in the blanks as far as what's required in the bid specifications. So unfortunately, there won't be any work this summer, but we plan on doing going out to bid again, and hopefully doing this work the following summer.
What's happening to the funds that we allocated?
Still there. We're fully funding this through either ESSER 2 funds or American Rescue Plan ESSER funds.
And we don't have a use it or lose it concern?
We do, but so a much smaller allocation that we have dedicated to these projects is ESSER 2, which just has to be spent by September 30th, 2023. The rest of the money, which is a much more substantial amount, probably around $700,000 to $800,000, is American Rescue Plan's funds, which has to be spent by September 30th, 2024.
But then there's a possibility of extension that we talked about last week.
Towards that, there is, if we can request an extension on use of funds for that American Rescue Plan.
And we can't hire 10 seniors to work with some plumbers. We got the
That's a little
crew, and we got a plumbing crew.
So sorry for the bad news.
I mean, if you look at some of the extensive work, Peter uses these bathrooms out here,
Yeah.
we're actually are tearing up tile and floors up and stuff like that, so it's pretty extensive work.
Yeah, it was $1 million worth of work we were trying to accomplish this summer. So yeah, unfortunately, not this summer, but we're not gonna just roll over and show our belly and just not do it again. We're gonna go out to bid truly.
Is there any possibility of doing it during
And you're
the,
graduating.
like,
so
end of
it's-
year break or the November break, or, you know, like, is it worth keeping it open to try to?
Trust me, I talked to the
You thought
architect
about all
for a
that, yeah.
long time after we had our bid
Right.
openings yesterday. And even to say like, hey, we give a contractor 10 days to knock out a couple of bathrooms, it's really tough to mobilize and get, because there are more than one trade that we're talking about, not just
Yes,
one.
no, it's coordination, right?
But there's electrical that's
Yeah.
involved in what we're trying to accomplish, so it's just tough to really plan all that for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Sorry. Next item. Let's see how many people we're going to sell this one. So, a crew update. So we've been talking about this for a few months on the crew. Mr. Catalano reached back to the crew, talking to them, at least the 22-23 budget has already been set. And the way athletics are funded and head counts are calculated, the 23-24 budget's actually mostly set as well. They're going to continue to work with doing the phone interviews with the ADs and the BAs of the competitive districts to determine, again, the funding levels as well as the funding sources. But we're expanding it to not just crew programs, but all other expensive programs that are specialized to small numbers of schools. Some schools have surfing programs, some schools have equestrian programs up in the north. You know, these are especially small number of schools, and how do they fund it? And how do they fund it, and how much is committed by the district and taxpayer? So those interviews can continue. Our goal is to try to see what we can do, if anything can be done. It is what it is.
Yeah.
The next one is federal funding. We discussed the different levels. we're not, Haddonfield as a district is not eligible for Title I or Title IV funds. We don't qualify as a district or any individual schools. We do qualify for Title II funds for the central school, and that'll continue. That's been happening for the last few years.
Title II is District 1.
Oh, that's district-wide, okay. And then we will also be receiving Title III funds, which is English language learner funds for one student in the coming year. And then we talked about the parent and student device management agreement. So the one-on-one initiatives, you have the opportunity to buy insurance at the end of the year. In the high school, we're having an advanced version of the Chromebook that includes stylus, and that was at the request of the teachers and the students to have a higher quality stylus-driven Chromebook. The stylus is pretty expensive and easy to lose, so it's going to have its own maintenance agreement. So for the high schoolers, the maintenance agreement is more expensive because it's covering not only the Chromebook, but the stylus itself.
I'm sorry, what grade gets the?
9 to 12.
9 to 12, okay.
Once though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't
I
it?
believe,
Freshman, sophomore.
please don't quote me on this, but I believe it's freshman, would you say freshman and sophomore, I think it is.
That's what.
Freshman, sophomore.
Yes, with the plans to have the whole high school.
So the entire class will.
And these have a shelf life of 4 years as opposed to 3,
Right.
so the idea is you get it as a freshman and it is good for 4 years.
Higher quality, stronger screens, all those things.
And, yeah, I don't care. So we discussed the ramifications of the closure of Crow's Woods. Crow's Woods is currently closed. We're going under the assumption, because nothing has been officially announced, that it will be closed for the fall. So we have to proactively plan budget as well as schedule planning. But budget is the purview of the Finance Committee of what we're going to do to support our school teams that need to use that space. This isn't new to the district. During the referendum, we had our football team playing in a different home field for 2 years. Basketball, we rented different gyms for practices and different gyms for games. But in not knowing what the plans are, we just have to plan ourselves to be able to cover our school. Freshman soccer,
So a couple sub-varsity soccer teams.
yeah, some varsity soccer teams is the best way to put it, that use that field for the fall. We have to be able to find them a home for practice and for games. And we talked about what the budget would look like for that, without answers yet. I mean, we just put that in motion.
To circle, does anyone have questions on the field first? So to circle back on the Title I funding, and somebody had brought this to my attention from their district, but because of, and I know we never had a large amount of students have Title I students, but because this friend of mine is in a larger district where there is a lot of Title I students, but because this past year everyone got free lunch, students didn't fill out the paperwork. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that if that's something that we could, that might have impacted us, even if it's slightly, I know. But they said that they just because no one filled out the paperwork because it was free, because you automatically got the free.
Yeah, but it's funny, free and reduced lunch, the form itself and applying for that actually covers other things too. So
It
you get
does, and
lunch.
people don't, that's what I'm saying, so if you didn't, I guess other people don't know. Yeah, so when you fill out that free and reduced lunch form, that's what gets the Title I funding. And so if you don't have to fill out that form, I would think that the state might have realized now that was a.
Yeah, and it doesn't just cover food.
It
So
does, yeah.
somebody who's food insecure might also not be able to perform as well in math and reading. It makes a lot of sense. So some of those funds they can apply to, supplemental teaching as well,
Right.
for those students. So something I've heard all the years on the board, I've put out to fill out that form. Don't assume that you don't qualify.
Yeah. So, I guess if anyone's listening, make sure you fill out your lunch, free reduced lunch form. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was going to tell you finished.
Oh, okay. Lynn is not here today, so Rachel is going to be giving the policy update.
Yeah, we met on June 9th. We had a very ambitious agenda of first reads, We were 2 hours in, I think, when we declared the mercy rule existed and moved some of the policies to July's meeting. So I'll highlight what we chatted about. One was actually not a policy, but we talked with Lefty and Tammy about the athletic practice of reducing squads or not reducing squads based on numbers. There are some concerns right now in the high school around field space, safety, and the financial implications of having so many students. It's like a great problem to have, right? We have so many students who participate in our athletic programs. And so we talked about, in particular, baseball and girls soccer have really high numbers and consistently have over the past, I think it was 4 years. And so brainstorming of what guidance the athletic director should be using with coaches and what kind of decisions to be made. So there were no decisions, there's no policy. There isn't even a policy right now in place around athletics. It's just a practice that we have been carrying on for I don't know how many years. I just have a now sophomore, so I don't know.
Can you refresh the practice, because I'm not familiar with it? We don't cut.
Don't cut except for basketball and golf.
Okay.
And so the plan is to just keep the discussion going and talk about in our next meeting. So the policies we did chat about were 241504 and 0.50, which are Title I policies at district level and a school. Every school building has to have their own policy. Mike joined us. It sounds like finance was having similar but many discussions. We talked a little bit about those policies use the term parent, and we talked about whether we should be using guardian or is there another term that might be. But then we talked about how that potentially could be confusing if we only change some policies and not all, and how much work it would be to change every policy, how much voting we'd all have to do to make those kinds of changes. So that was the discussion we had. And so these policies are in preparation for if and when we do receive Title I funding. So we don't need them right now, but they're ready to go is the idea. We also talked about, I'm in a Google Doc on a Chromebook. Are we gonna get stylus Chromebooks?
These aren't even the student ones, these are the leftovers.
The leftovers, okay. Policy 2416.01 is a postnatal accommodations for students policy. It's a new policy. It mimics the policy we have for our employees. And the idea is we would be doing these things regardless of having the policy. So Gina thought we should make this a policy. We should make this legitimate. And so it's offering accommodations to any students who are parents. And Tammy joined us for that. Discussion. We also talked about policy 7410 and its regulation, and regulation 7410.01 about maintenance, repairs, and accounting. Mike and Tim joined us for that discussion, and we essentially spent a little bit of time talking about the process of how things get documented and made sure the policy accurately reflected our program, like how it all gets assigned, approved, and that. So little discussion on that. We discussed policy 8420 on emergency and crisis situations. There were no major changes for that policy. There is one operating change, so we'll be seeking, or the school will be seeking, student government representation and parent feedback on that. Policy 9320 and its regulation, cooperation with law enforcement. There were no major changes to that policy. And then the remaining policies we'll put on first read for July, and these will essentially move to second read.
Which are primarily legislative changes to the HIV law that now require some tweaks to the policy. Overall, the changes are small, but there are a lot of them, so we decided to pump that to next month.
Right. We prioritize the required updated ones so that we wouldn't be delayed. Any
Okay.
questions? Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say you did a nice job. I know Lynn has big shoes to fill. So you
Right, I
did
know,
very
yeah,
well.
pressure's on. Thank you.
Question, so I don't.
Yeah, right.
Because it sounds like you had a lot going on, but we did talk, in the past couple of meetings about the difference between, policies and regulations, and there are some regulations that we do need to vote on as a board, and some that we certainly should read through, but they're not really anything that we vote on. Did you guys have any?
We did.
It sounds like you were way too busy
Right,
to.
we did have discussion about it, but we did update the
Change it on the
agenda.
agenda.
Yeah, if you look at this month's agenda, under governance, C and D are separating out the policy and the regulations. So the policies are the ones we are going to approve, and the regulations are ones that we are aware of. We are acknowledging that we've seen the regulation. So remember, the regulation is how the district is going to implement the policy. We oversee the policy, like we can influence that. The regulation is up to all of our great faculty and staff.
Right,
And so,
Yeah.
And as we talked about, this review process allows the board to say, well, this is your regulation to implement this policy. We're concerned that the regulation will not meet all of the statutory requirements, and we had discussion around that. And in my research and figuring out how other school districts do it, not that I want to say this is groundbreaking, that's not it, but no other place that I researched does it this way. They just kind of lump in everything as an approval. I think this is a more transparent and more accurate way of how actually policy and regulation work together. And again, there are a handful of regulations that statutorily do require board approval, and in those, they would be under that item C
approval list.
for approval.
Okay.
And I do very much appreciate that. I like that we read through the regulation, even though we don't vote on it. I guess I'm asking, do we have a way that we're gonna handle it in the meeting? The actual technicality of when we're going to the meeting and,
So when Jamie calls for a vote,
Yes, yes.
are we gonna vote, are we gonna say,
yeah, what happens, and we don't have to think about it now, but that is what I'm asking, yeah.
Well, I would think we say yes, right? So don't abstain from, because it says regulations for board review. So you're essentially versus policy approval. So you're eventually saying yes to the review. And it also gives you an opportunity to discuss it, and that way everyone gets to read it. But I think since it doesn't say regulations for approval,
Correct.
then it would just, so don't abstain because you did get to see it. So I guess the abstaining would be discussion around it.
Or if you, and I think a no regulation would be if you think there's a misalignment with the policy
right,
or
right,
approving
right.
or something.
Okay, any other questions for Rachel? Okay, Linda, LRFP?
Yes, we met on June 7th, so it seems like 100 years ago. We actually had some folks show up there from bond counsel to give us some information on what, with what's happening with our economy, what could this look like? When we start talking about the bond, that, things could be changing. So they were looking at different scenarios and how much money we would have to borrow for each dollar. If the percentage rate was here, then how much we'd have to borrow in order to pay this amount of bond. And just they're looking at those kinds of things because we want to be smart when we get to that place. That this is well ahead of the fact, but just so that we're making sure that we're looking at all angles, and also looking at how much and how we can get funds. One of the great examples that they gave, if we are talking about a field, fields aren't eligible to be funded, but drainages. So how can we look at all the things that are part of this big moving puzzle that we're trying to put together, and how can we use the money the best that we can, be fiscally responsible, and get the most educational initiatives in place for our students. So just looking at the finances is an important part of this. And then right now, we had talked about this last time, but the architect is working on, based on all of the charrettes that have happened, working on broad stroke concepts that we're now going to be able to, when he comes back to us, bring back into the community. Perhaps there will be some polling over the summer and additional charrettes in the fall. We want to make sure that we're getting engagement at a time when people are here. We don't want to be doing anything during the summer because we know what summer is like. So all of that work it's just broad strokes work so that we can then check back in and say, here are some concepts and how's that resonating. The one thing that I do want to discuss is all of this is with the presumption that the land swap is going to go through and that we have land to work with. We do not yet have an agreement with the borough. We are hoping that it will happen before July 21st. That's a big number for us because if we don't have an agreement in place, then we're going to have to spend another $20,000 because our environmental screening report will no longer be good. We'll have to get another one of those. So July 1st, we're really, really hoping that we have agreement and
July 21st.
Yeah.
I said July 1st.
Oh, I'm sorry, 21st, yes, thank you. But we're going to keep moving in good faith that is going to happen and that we can get this finalized. And then the next thing is we do not yet have commitment on a demolition date. So we need to have Cooley Hall demolished in order to move forward. So we're very hopeful that all of this is going to fall into place. It feels a bit uncomfortable that we don't have anything finalized right now, but again, we're good faith hoping that we're going to get there. Questions?
Do we have an estimate on when we think the architect will share kind of the big ideas that came out of all of the meetings that you
I'm
were
going to talk about that.
Oh, okay, all right, never mind. I was just trying to,
Do we have any PTA updates? Okay, Dr. Priola?
A couple of brief announcements. We're getting ready to roll out our summer enrichment class starting July 5th. There's about a dozen classes, nearly 200 students participating in that program. So we're excited about that. The past couple summers have been dicey getting staff together for curriculum work. So we are full steam ahead this summer. We're looking at over 40 curriculum projects, nearly 900 hours of work that we're coordinating for the summer. So very excited about that. A lot of great things happening all across from preschool through grade 12. That's it. Any questions?
I have to say, Tommy, my son Tommy's in 8th grade, and I told him, like, I had a meeting tonight. He said, you have a meeting, it's summer. What would you possibly be doing? And I'm like, wait till you see the agenda. There's a lot going on in the summer, which is great. But I was like, I wish I could take the break.
My 12-year-old asked me again last night, Dad, why are you working with schools?
Schools at just closed, yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, that's what he said. He's like, what do you talk about? I'm like, oh. We have stuff
Do you
to
want
talk
school
about.
open in
Yeah,
September or not?
exactly. Watch my meetings. Okay, Mr. Klaus, the superintendent's report?
Sure. Got, sorry. We've got several things to talk about tonight. And we've already touched on many of them. So here's what we're looking at: bond referendum, closing schools. Not we're closing schools. School closed for the summer. I should have phrased that better. Math updating, health things.
Then you said it was just the bathroom.
So the first thing is a bond referendum. We have been working with the architect and looking at those things. So we are putting together surveys right now that we can get out to people to get we had some really nice visiting sessions and we touched on some things, but now we're trying to get more specific. So what we'll do is he's taking a lot of the ideas that came through the visiting sessions and saying, okay, let's pull this down a little bit more, and then we're going to do another set of sessions based on how the surveys come out. So we'll have some ranking order things like what are your highest priorities, those other things. One of the big things we talked about was in the visioning sessions, there was a lot of stuff like how much should we build for community use, right? So if we're gonna be putting things up, how much are we putting aside for maybe, something that the community can use as well? And try to get an idea of that. And where we try to look at it a little bit is, if you're refurbishing, if you're doing something in your house, where are you investing your money? The kitchens, this, or bathrooms, or, you redo your kitchen, you paint your bedroom, right? Is that how we're gonna look at it? So we're gonna try to get some feedback on those things. So we're gonna try to get this out by the beginning of July. It's summertime, but we do have email. So
How
I think
long
we
will
can
it be
get.
open for?
What's that?
How long will the survey be
Oh,
open for?
I think we can keep it open for a while. We'll probably set it up for, because we're not gonna have those visioning sessions till a little bit later.
Mhm.
We can resend the link a couple of times and say, hey, can you give your feedback?
Just to be responsive to, the
yeah.
concern that.
Because there's going to be people who are out and this and
Yep.
that, but so we want to get as much as possible. School closing schools. We had the end of the year, we had some, the normal the big three events. We look at the 5th grade move up, which is nice. 8th grade promotion was last night. Graduation was 2 nights ago. We got lucky with weather-wise on all 3 of them. We're at the point now where, when I was principal, and a little before that, if you had rain on high school graduation, you wanted the auditorium. We can't do that anymore. We had 229 kids graduate. We can't fit 209 kids in our auditorium stage. And then if you figure we only can fit like 800 people in the seats, now you're like 3 tickets per kid. It's really challenging. That's why we have the Friday rain date. And it's something we're really gonna have to look at about making sure that we can do that. It's going to be tough. I mean, I guess we could put them in the B gym, so the kids are on the floor. There's no air in there. So if you have a hot night and it's raining, it would be really uncomfortable. So we are continuing to hope for good weather, but we're also coming up with plans just in case there's good weather. We know that's the
Would
best
be
plan.
uncomfortable? Yeah, sat in that BJ
yeah.
for graduation.
For
It's hot
instance,
as hell
There,
when it's
didn't we have
raining.
the 8th grade one there?
Yes.
years ago, yeah. I know that other
Yours
schools
was
around
there.
here, like Eastern, have moved to 3 o'clock graduations to avoid thunderstorms.
God.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Time of the day.
I know, but there's no thunderstorms. Anyway, so we are talking to those things. But the thing I wanted to, I feel I need to address tonight, post-graduation, I have concerns, post-graduation concerns. So when we came into school on Wednesday, and the 8th graders were coming to show up for the turf field to rehearse for 8th grade promotion, what people found was the field strewn with beer bottles and beer cans, throw up. We had cameras. At one point, we saw roughly about 150 kids on the field at that point in time. They got into the bathrooms in the stadium and vandalized the bathroom, doing, we're going to guess, $2,500 worth of damage. We've been in contact with the police. We have given them the videos. We have supplied any names of students we could identify, and they're going to do an investigation. We will press charge. They trespassed and vandalized. That's our intention. And to the extent of what this is, so after graduation, there's a party Tavistock, which ended about 11:30. About 11:35, you started seeing people coming onto the field. We actually left the field lights on, figuring that was discourage people. It did not.
But it got good shots.
Got good shots, right. But the other thing too is we have joggers in town. There were joggers coming to run on the track at 6 o'clock in the morning who were passing students who were still there. So it's more than concern, it's a problem. So we have to look at addressing that and be working on that. So that
What's
happens.
the current thought process in terms of like having patrol there or
I
having some sort
think-
of security?
I think patrol security is part of that. But I will tell you this. So when Mrs. McHale sent an email out to the senior parents saying this happened, and she got not one or two, several students email her and contact her and apologize, saying they were there, it was wrong, we'll help, we're happy to help any way we can. So we had that response. But we used to have it. The seniors used to have a sleep out on the night before, the Tuesday night before Thanksgiving, when they had hall decorations. And a lot of the parents thought that was a school function, and it wasn't. And so we simply started emailing parents saying, hey, just be aware of this. This is not us, and this is the type of stuff that happens there. So we'll probably start doing those type of things too. I think community awareness is a big part. I think patrol is another big part. So, you know, it's disappointing, it's sad, you know, and I'm gonna say disheartening. I mean, you know, we try to do a lot of work to do nice things for kids and nice things, and it feels a little bit like a betrayal. It does. Doesn't feel like it is a betrayal in my mind. And so, you know, we'll have to try to change that culture a little bit. I'm not sure quite the best way to do it, but we won't start thinking about it June 1st next year, right? We'll start thinking about it now. So here's a math update. We're going to a little more detail than we did in the other thing. And Gino's going to talk about he worked with the K-5 people. I work more with the 6 to 12 people. So, Gino, if you want to take us through some of the updates in the math piece.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time reflecting on the pilot that occurred over the past year. And to put it in its most simplest terms, I think we learned a lot of good things. We heard a lot of good feedback. But our teachers and our specialists and our principals are not feeling the pilot afforded us a clear path to spend a couple $100,000 on materials and professional development on a program we intend to use for the next 10 to 12 years. So in consultation with teachers, in consultation with our math specialists and our building principals, we are going to continue the work next year in exploring programs, not only exploring programs, but looking more deeply at least one of the programs that we began looking at this past school year. And once we identify other high quality evidence-based programs, we are then going to invest in training teachers to implement a pilot, a full year pilot during the 2023 school year. So we are pumping the brakes on this a little bit, but we believe that this extra time will pay dividends in years to come. We think our current math program needs to be replaced, but there isn't a sense of urgency that our data is very poor at the elementary school, nor are teachers saying that we need to get rid of this now. So we're going to take the extra time to do this efficiently, but more thoroughly, and provide more training on the front end for our pilot teachers, which is something that we learned from this year. You know, anytime you implement something, it may not go according to how you planned. Instead of pushing something forward, we're really listening to our folks, taking a pause, re-implementing a pilot, a more thorough pilot research next year, during the next school year, training all of those pilot teachers to implement the following year, and then look the following school year for full implementation of a 21st century math program that will take us through the next 10 to 15 years.
Are you still planning on looking at more than one next year, or are you narrowing in on a single?
More than likely, it will be 2.
Okay.
But the idea of one is not out of the question. There are a lot of different schools of thought and opinions, and that's why instead of rushing through, one of the variables we considered was having that expiration in the first half of next year with a second half of the year pilot. But there's not consensus, and there's not a clear-cut path to a single program. So that's why we're choosing the research process again next year with full-year pilot the following year.
Yeah.
And it could be 1 or 2 programs.
Yeah, I think more than one is probably a good idea. Because I think once you get into a program, at least in my teaching experience, you start to really realize, wait a minute, I thought this part of it was great, but now 2 units in, I don't think this is working. It just takes some time.
And it also allows us to take more methodical comparison data to whether it's 1 or 2 pilots versus the control groups, which continue with the everyday math.
Right. Yeah.
And everyday math, so I'm sure they haven't rested on their laurels as a program, and they introduce improvements. I'm not saying that I'm actually asking the question, what was our policy, what was our practice of keeping up with updates? you know, we do these updates with policies all the time. Administrative updates come down, judicial updates come down.
Yep.
Do we actually bake that in to
Did we
make
get
sure that
math
we
back,
are
you know?
moving with the improvements that our incumbent is gonna make, or else we're just gonna buy another one that's gonna dry on the vine?
Well, it's a nuanced answer to that.
Okay.
Right? What we initially found when Everyday Math came up with their updates, they didn't deliver on what they promised.
Okay.
For example, some of the standard integration and some of the updates that they said had happened, we believe were surface level and did not do a deep dive into them. And that was very frustrating for our teachers. And that required a lot of piecing together of things where the updates fell short. We had to then supplement with our own curriculum created materials, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it did leave a bad taste in many mouths, in the sense that they said, here's what the new updates will accomplish, but our analysis of them, they did not deliver on what was promised.
My other understanding is Everyday Math was horrendous online, all during the pandemic. So I think teachers worked really, really hard to
There
make
was a
sure our
lot- there was
students
a
have
lot of-
such a
There
great.
was a lot, let's say, not the curriculum's a program. There was a lot of
Right.
rewriting of the program to
Right.
make it the curriculum we use.
Yeah.
And I do want to add, you know, even when something doesn't go according to plan, it's not labeled, we're not labeling it a failure this past
No,
year, right?
right.
And there are some aspects that will be introduced next school year that we believe will fill some holes of the current Everyday Math program. For example, fact fluency, something almost entirely absent from the Everyday Math program. So one of the things we learned from the past year that we will be implementing a supplemental program called Reflex Math. That will help that fact fluency or that mathematics automaticity that we think will be helpful for our students.
And six through Algebra 1, actually, because we're going to, Desmos, which is one of the programs we looked at, is going to be our primary resource. It's a strong tool. It's got great differentiation ability, so it's got, you can put some rigor in, and if you have children struggling, there's remediation. We talk about feedback, it's got many places to draw from, so one of the challenges is we take a quiz, Charlie's absent, we can't get the quiz back because he's absent, he's going to take it up, so you can replace questions and do that, so that's a big, strong tool. With that, we're going to be using some of the tools we already have, so it's going to be a way to combine different programs to work together, to put the thing together. Now, Desmos, which by the way, has got a lot of the tools in the toolkit, has a calculator feature and all these things. Looks like it's going to be a calculator feature that's going to be used in the SAT and the NGSLA, so our kids will be well versed in that by the time they get to those places. At least they're very used to seeing, because I was an English teacher, but apparently the TI 91 and the 94 are different to use. I don't know. I just have plus signs in mine and minus signs. So, but the Desmos calculator can do all those things, and it's a tool that becomes very useful. So if you're in a high pressure testing situation, SAT, you've got an advantage if you that tool. That's your go-to. Now, Desmos only goes up to Algebra 1 right now. They're rolling out the geometry pilots next year, and then Algebra 2 the year after that. So as Desmos grows and we find we like Desmos, we're going to grow with it in those areas, and that'll be how we're going to roll out there. So Desmos was one that got a lot of good feedback on the rollout of the pilot. And then once again, Dr. Malo from Rowan is going to come in. A lot of learning walks, a lot of working with teachers, a little bit of construct curriculum, that type of stuff, but more about, okay, what does a math class look like, right? And I mean, we all have experiences when we were young what math class looked like, and I would probably say it's probably the same for many of us. You came in, you reviewed homework, you learned something, you practiced it, you went home, you did homework, right? That's what a lot of those things is. It's going to be a way to look at math differently, make it more inquiry-based exploration, and that works perfect with Desmos, which is an inquiry-based program. So we're going to get the tool, we're going to get a new way to look at it, and we're going to get trained very well in how that works. So that's the math piece. Any questions on?
No, just pointing out the difference between K-5 and 6-12 is starting in sixth grade, you have math specialists. So they are math teachers. They're not elementary school teachers that are teaching 15 topics over the course of, 8 hours or 7 hours or whatever it is. That they can spend the time to evaluate a tool much more effectively and recognize right away whether something's working or not, because they are That's what they do that's what they do. They're specialists.
What has our outreach been to parents as we do, or parents and guardians, the grown-ups in the house that are seeing their kids do math? Because I know I've heard a lot of complaints from folks about math. But I think that the new math, like, having looked into it, I think the newer ways of teaching math are fantastic. So I'm wondering, like, how are we bridging the gap between those people who aren't getting it because they're not in the classroom, and sort of bringing them into the classroom a bit as to why this is such an effective program?
I don't have a great answer for that.
I actually do.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask whether, are you talking about K to 5 or those older classes?
K to 5.
Okay, because that's very, very different.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, but the everyday math has parent things that come
Yeah, like the
home
little
that will,
handout sheets, right?
I mean, I don't know, that's how I learned that crazy lattice. I
That
can't remember the
education,
lattice.
I still can't figure
It was traumatizing for me.
It works really well up
It's
until a
like-
point, though. I like that.
Oh, it works for everything. There's no point. It can keep working.
Yeah, so-
See, that's what I mean,
I
like.
remember that letter came home and I was like,
But we did, I was on part of a committee this last year, and we did have a community outreach subcommittee I was on, but I lost steam towards the end because of my own semester ending. But we generated some ideas of like having a family math night or where we could get students and parents together so they could experience something that's from the textbook. So, you can get a flavor of what we're
I
doing.
would love if that would be something that the consultant that we're bringing in could give some thought to.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a need to bridge that gap for a lot of people. I think that can only help the students.
And we have some ideas.
Our kids get to a level of math that often outrun the parents.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think there's no need, well, I mean.
And then the update on the health and PE piece. So one of the things we haven't had a chance to meet too many times because it's the end of the school year. But what we've come up with is one of the big keys is the community interaction, right? So we were actually going to put a link on it, we're actually put a page up. It's going to update this and get feedback from there. We have a dedicated email address on that page, so if you have a comment or concern, a compliment maybe, who knows if someone might like what we're doing, you can send that in. We're a survey.
Dream big.
Yeah, we're a survey to get feedback specifically about topics and areas, right? Because it's PE health is a huge area, right? And so we want to make sure that we're getting not generalized feedback, but to certain points to make sure we understand it. When we put the health curriculum together, topics will be compartmentalized. So if there's a topic you don't want your child exposed to or hear about, it will not be spread out. It will be, this is when this is happening. Units and timelines will be updated quarterly. That way they know what's going on. And we'll have the opt-out process on the website, actually in a Google form. So it's an easy piece. As you get the updates, you'll be able to hit that there. And then one of the things we talked about was, again, curriculum versus programming, is how we're going to approach some of these topics. So this is the one we talked about before that caused that is the most challenging for us, the 8th grade example. So we had the examples up there of what the standards say, right? This is, but this is examples, when we talked about it, we went to, why is this being placed here? And so they went to the state pulled the things from the Pediatrics American, and this is the reasons why. So we're going to talk not about the sex as much as about why it's important you understand certain things, right? So if this is about agency over bodies, language and understanding, this is about consent, this is about knowing what choices may be made and maybe how you deal with those when they come up. And so this is not about an act of sex. This is about saying, these are things you need to be aware of because you may come across them in the future and you should be aware. So that's how we're going to approach it, not as that way. So we're trying to look at when we pull up with the standards, why they put them there, make that a driving force in the conversation. And then that's it.
So I want to ask this question, which I believe I know the answer to, but I want to ask it again.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly know the board is not deciding that we should talk about this. I don't believe the school is deciding we should talk about this.
No.
I believe it is the state is mandating we must do X, and the school is deciding what is the best way to do the thing that we must do.
Right, so, and so the question comes up, what if we don't do it? What if we just say, no, we're not doing it? Well, first of all, CUSAC, which is a driving force of what we do. And then, although I don't believe this would ever happen, this could be state funding because you're not following a direct order by the Department of Education. And so there are implications. Now, that being said, there are some school districts that said, we're not doing this, right? So, I mean, this could be a wait and see what happens. But I mean, we are following the guidance of the Department of Education, which my job, I work for the borough, but I'm also an agent of the Department of Education. So my job is to do those things. My job is also to do it with community thoughts in mind, right, and get community outreach. So as we're working forward to doing this with the team, we are trying to say, we're to follow the rules, but you know, we also are aware of the sensitivities. I mean, right now, in our health curriculum, our puberty lessons come at the end of your 5th grade year, like the last week of school, we have puberty lesson. The next time you have anything to do with your body and sex is 11th grade. That's a big jump. And so, so that's one of the challenges we have there.
Are there any, and I haven't looked into this, maybe I could find it myself pretty easily, but if if it's coming from the AAP, did they issue any sort of policy statements or guidance that led to the New Jersey Department of Education adopting these standards?
Right, so in that, the clarification statement from New Jersey has links to the website that has this stuff. So that's the guidance we're following. So that's our plan moving forward. And there it is.
Chuck, I have a question about the opt-out process.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just for health class, or I
That's a
feel like
great-
things
that's
get
a great
really
question.
blurry, and I think that is really challenging for our faculty and staff to navigate. And so I think we just need to be super clear on what you
Right.
can
And
opt out of and not.
so that's a great question. According to the statute, it says health.
Okay.
What our advice, and Gina, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, what our advice, what our thought about is, it's not the teacher certification that's issue here, it's the topic.
Right.
Right, and so, my gut is, without following the statute, this is a topic issue, not a teacher issue or class denomination issue, the delineation issue. So I would think that anytime there's a topic that involves those things of family choice and other, we would offer that out. I know that I was an English teacher. There are students who say, I'm not comfortable with this novel. We would give them something else to read, right? So we certainly don't want to say you're wrong. This is, so it is blurry.
Yeah, because
But it also speaks, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rich.
well, I was just gonna say, we need to review the health standards more thoroughly, but I think there's a lot of making sure text and library and images reflect humans who live in our society. And so, and I think if there are things that make me uncomfortable, then I may want to opt my kid out of any exposure to those. But no, there's going to be a poster in the hallway that advertises whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's the blurriness I think that
I understand.
Yeah,
That is a challenge. And so,
Yes.
and this might be our experimental run, right? How we handle this and say, okay, how does this look if we go elsewhere? Right. Because it's a complicated, it's topic more complicated by the day.
And compartmentalizing the sensitive lessons also makes it very clear. I mean, those are the ones that are going to be for, that people might be most opposed to. And so it's going to be easier both for the teachers and the parents and the students, having it compartmentalized.
Right.
So I think that's
one
going
of the
to
goals
build
is
the schedule.
one of the goals is to make sure families feel comfortable and safe with it, but also that opting out of health altogether is not, we don't want that. We want to make sure that people get exposed to can get exposed to other aspects of health.
Right, but there's a difference between what an individual parent wants to do and what the school's mission is.
Correct.
You're not in the business of creating frogs at the bottom of the well, Chuck. You're creating skies beyond the sky. And if people want to choose to ignore the clouds, they can. in health.
I love you, Dave.
I know.
Hey, what was that last part you just said?
Put it here.
I said, if you want to choose to ignore the clouds, you can, in health.
It helped.
That's the topic that we're talking about.
No, help. So she's a different word.
Yeah, I thought.
Oh, no, health. No, in health.
I'm good.
Yeah.
You're just very colorful.
Yeah,
I thought, well, Dave, you never know. I was like, wow, very good.
yeah, no.
I mean, I think we also, well, just one thing as we were talking about it now that I hadn't thought of before, is that we know we have a very fine line that we're trying to tread here, but in some ways, with all of the APDOTs, it could end up having the counter incentive of making this lesson more attractive, I guess, or like, you know, when you tell a teenager don't do something, or like, I'm gonna pull you out of it, they're automatically more interested than if it were just like, well, here's your math homework, and here's your parts of the body homework, and here's your consent, so I just.
Yeah, I envision like, the doctors now ask about these things. And so I envision it, and it's much more, and it's framed around consent. So I think that, not that they're anyone's doctors or anything, but it's that in an academic sense, like I do think like, I think it will be, yeah. I would think that it wouldn't be, it's gonna be.
Here's the thing, we're talking about it now like this is all something new. My kid who's 18 years old now had the option in 5th grade to opt out of the puberty lesson. So opting out that's not new. We've been able to do it. So I think maybe because we're talking about it, we're spending a lot of time, but this isn't new. We've been able to opt out.
Well, and these health standards aren't new either. I mean, I remember 8th grade health for me. I did not grow up in New Jersey, but we learned about condoms, consent. We did a project where we figured out which pharmacies would sell condoms to us, which wouldn't. We did all kinds of, I mean, and it wasn't that it was super exciting. It was more like, wait a minute, that store thinks I can't go in and, like, I can buy a pack of gum, but I can't. This is so weird. Like, how does the world work? I mean, it was, to me, I thought it was really interesting as an 8th grader. It was more fired up about the ethics than it's actually content. You know what I mean? I'm like, wait a minute, who do you think you are?
I would just like to say again, though, that the board or the school, we're not coming up with these kinds of things, and I don't think that the goal is to come up with projects like that. I think the goal is to meet the very basic level that the DOE is telling us that we have to meet.
Right, what I'm just saying, right, in the 80s, in the early 90s, that's what I was doing.
But I think you're right with this. We're anyway. All right.
Okay, are you all finished?
I'm all finished.
Okay, so for my president's report, I just want to say thank you for everyone for a wonderful school year. I think it was great. I love the graduation was beautiful. I was at the 8th grade promotion because my son was promoted, not graduated. And yeah, so it was great. So thank you everyone for a great school year, because so much goes into this and so much continues to go into this throughout the summer, as we know. And which brings us to the election that's coming up, which Dave, whatever you had said, I couldn't make sense of it, but it made me miss you already. Because Dave is going to finish out his term, but is not rerunning.
That's right.
So he will finish his term. He will be here until January, December 30th.
December, last meeting in
31st,
December.
yeah. But as you were speaking, I was like, oh, well, it was a riddle to me, but
It's another way to say,
very,
we're not here to create ostriches who put their head in the sand.
oh,
Or frogs who live at the bottom of the
Frogs in
well.
the
oh. All right.
Their only view is the sun.
So Dave is not rerunning. It's a little different this year, which is why I wanted to go into it, because we have three-year terms, and there will be one-year term, because Tom Vecchio submitted his resignation before the end of his term. We then appointed Greg, who can only serve appointed for 1 year. So whoever wins this 1 year seat then runs for a 3-year term after that. So it's not perpetually a 1-year seat. It's only a 1-year seat this first year, and then you rerun for your 3-year term to get back on track with Tom Vecchio's original seat. And Linda, Greg, and I declared we are running, so we're going to continue to run, and then and there's also so that we're all running for the 3-year terms, but that's open for everyone, and then there's the 1-year term. But again, if you have, so I'm envisioning the form, but I did want to tell people, if you're filling out the form, feel free to reach out to me if you want it to go for the 1-year term, because you actually write in your years, and I can't envision what the form looks like, but I know it's not straightforward. So feel free to reach out if anyone is thinking of running for the term. Let me know, and I'll.
And it's a separate question on the ballot.
It is a separate, good point. So it's a separate question. So it'll be like, you know how they're all linked in. There's like the 3-year term and then the 1-year term. So you actually, the 1-year term are running against 1-year people, and the 3-year terms run against 3-year people. So that's how it's
But you
actually
run in
delineated.
both or no?
I don't think so.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, you have this.
So.
Well,
You never know. But yeah, no, so we think you have to declare to run for the 3-year or the 1-year. But yeah, if you have questions, you can email me at my board email. And there, it's the, what is it, the third Monday in July or something.
The 26th.
Yeah, I think it goes by the Monday.
Yeah, and it's 3:00 in the
I think it's 2 days for petitions.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to public comments. We'll now begin the open public comment session. Members of the community are invited to speak for no more than 3 minutes about agenda items at this time. Non-agenda comments will be taken at the end of the meeting and follow the same guidelines. If your 3 minutes is up, we invite you to get back in line if you'd like to make additional comments. This is an opportunity for the board to listen but not debate issues or enter a question and answer period. Please be aware that not all issues brought up before a board meeting will be resolved that evening. We ask you to state your name and the name of your street so that a designee can get back to you with a response if warranted. General responses to comments will be posted on the Board of Ed website under Resources tab where it says Open Public Comment Replies. While public education can be an emotional issue, we strive to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Public meetings are recorded and televised, and students often participate in the meetings. As such, citizens are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility.
Chris Main, 7 Roberts Avenue. I was gonna save this for the end, but I guess because we're talking about opt-out, this would be an appropriate time, since you were talking about it before. Is that okay?
Yeah, you
Well,
can.
there's only one public comment there.
Yeah.
We have no-
Well, no, it is voting today.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But it was in our, we had,
We talked
it
about it,
was,
okay.
he talked about it, yeah, you're good.
Okay, I can wait.
Yeah, it's okay.
But the problem with opting out is not about the specific lessons, like the puberty lesson, I don't think, so much as it is when it's sprinkled in throughout the curriculum. For example, I have several kids in the school system, among them my 10-year-old daughter who just finished 4th grade in Tatum. Like all my kids, I've given her an affectionate nickname. Hers is Goose. Like many kids her age, every December, my little Goose looks forward to a visit from Santa Claus. When she loses a tooth, she puts it out for the tooth fairy. As of her June 9th Tatum library class 2 weeks ago, she now knows what it means to be bisexual. And she's seen a video from a YouTube channel called The Pop and Ollie, of which about 3 minutes were devoted to a New York bar called the Stonewall Inn. So with her curiosity now piqued, she might Google Stonewall Inn, which will yield a Wikipedia page where she can read that, quote, once a week a police officer would collect envelopes of cash as a payoff, as the Stonewall Inn had no liquor license. These were bribes to keep from getting shut down. Though the bar was not openly used for prostitution, drug sales and other, quote, cash transactions took place. She's 10 years old. But according to the Pop and Ollie video, it was just a safe space to gather and be yourself. At the end of the Pop and Ollie video, the channel makes a plug for kids to subscribe to their channel. Subscribe, 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 it says. If she does, she'll be exposed to videos like Drag Explained for Kids and All the Boys I've Ever Loved. And they'll sprinkle in some critical race theory with Privilege Explained for Kids. So by showing this video, the teacher has by extension exposed these 10-year-olds to everything on that channel. That's called indoctrination. My wife and I found out about this the next morning at around 7:40 a.m. and we realized that our 8-year-old son had library that day at 9:30. I quickly found an opt-out form that had been circulating among some parents and printed it out and submitted it that morning. You can check the records, but I'd estimate that there were about 20 opt-out forms in various grades at Tatum submitted that morning alone, on short notice, without any kind of organized campaign. So where do we go from here? I can't get my little goose to unsee what she saw that day, but there needs to be accountability. On behalf of myself, many of the people here, and even more who aren't, I've spoken with 2 partners at a New Jersey law firm specializing in issues like this, as well as SEL and critical race theory in schools. We have rights, both per New Jersey Statute 18A 35-4.7, the Parent Statement of Conflict of Conscience, as well as the Federal Protection of People Rights Amendment. This isn't meant to sound confrontational. Rather, it is meant to save a lot of headaches and wasting time down the road. If 20 parents opted out on that short notice, consider a well-organized opt-out campaign across all grade schools, with concerned citizens on every sidewalk leading to every school in the district, handing out opt-out forms with cover sheets exposing this curriculum. It will be a mess trying to remove hundreds of kids and find alternative instruction for them every time these topics are taught as a standalone unit, but especially while intertwined with other subject matter. We don't even teach cursive in this district anymore. We spend very little time diagramming sentences, which is the basis for correctly using our language regardless of the topic. Yet we're teaching 10-year-olds about sexuality. My time is up, but I respectfully ask the board to rethink where you're headed with our curriculum, to refocus on the academics, and then to simply do what we do as parents, which is to teach our kids to just be nice to everybody. Thank you.
My husband wrote something, but he can't be here tonight. But I'll start with mine. I'm Jennifer Cartella. I live on 42 Walnut Street. And I thank you for your time. I hope that we can all agree that we all want the best for our children. Reaching out today in regards to a diversity book curriculum list that was sent out. Concerns that I had brought up privately with the curriculum director. And I believe she heard my concerns, but nothing came of it. I asked to be on the ELA curriculum to help write some of the curriculum this summer. I had, again, heard nothing. So I just wanted to make my concerns known to the community and to the Board of Ed members. When the books were issued, I read through each one, as I have small children in kindergarten through now 3rd grade. I thought some books were great. I thought others were better served in the hands of guidance counselors. And I'm going to take some time to read some of those excerpts from those books. The first book is approved for kindergarten and 3rd grade. It's called It Feels Good to Be Yourself. It's a book about gender identity. Now, this is an exact quote. It talks about a transgender girl. That means when she was born, everyone thought she was a boy. Until she grew up a little bit older, old enough to tell everyone that she was actually a girl. Girl is Ruthie's gender identity. The book then introduces topics like cisgender and non-binary. And then another exact quote, it says, this is Ruthie's friend Alex. Alex is both a boy and a girl. When Alex was born, everyone thought that she was a girl, but Alex is both boy and girl. This is Alex's gender identity. The next quote is, this is Alex's friend JJ. She's neither a boy nor a girl. Ever since JJ was very little, they never felt exactly like a boy or a girl. They just felt like themselves. This is JJ's gender identity. Another excerpt from a book, it's called Who Are You? A kid's book about gender identity. This book discusses gender identity, and this is an exact quote. These are just a few words people use. Trans, genderqueer, non-binary, gender fluid, transgender, gender neutral, agender, matrosis, which I don't even know, bigender, and third gender, two-spirit. There are many more words people use to describe their experience. This is called the gender spectrum. This last meeting, my husband came to address the shared concern that we had, and it was stated in that meeting that K-3 discussed gender stereotypes and not gender identity. But these books would suggest otherwise. So I'm just curious, like who's the population who passes these books? Like, how are they passed? And I bring this out of concern for the young children who can't conceptualize these ideas. Our children dealt with pandemic-induced anxiety, stress, and now are introducing complex ideologies like gender identity. And I'm asking you to reconsider some of these books in our list. Let our kids be kids. Thank you.
I have to go on to My name's Ann Kennedy, and I live on Grove Street. I have a third grader and a fifth grader at Tatum. I guess this is the time for this. I'm not quite sure if I'm following the rules, but I want to thank the school district for including a history of Pride Month in our curriculum. Visibility and inclusivity of minorities and marginalized groups is very important to me and to my family. Having these lessons presented in a neutral setting with kind wording, it helps reaffirm inclusion and understanding of everyone. It's very neutral. I want to thank the administrators and all the teachers who worked so hard on these lesson plans and for being so brave. I support LGBTQ communities.
This is on behalf of my husband. Good evening, board. I'd like to address Pride Month. Pride Month started with good intentions, and those intentions include treating others like you like to be treated, love your neighbor, love yourself, fairness, and love conquers all. The problem is that Pride Month and its various versions of multicolored flags has quickly grown into something that stands for much more than these principles. Its scope is now far more complex and nuanced, representing a variety of ideas, including but not limited to multiple gender types, dual gender, gender spectrums, and gender fluidity, interchangeable pronouns, etc., that has no place in a classroom. For the record, not supporting this expanded scope does not make a person intolerant, bigoted, myopic, or hateful, and one student or teacher should not be pressured to oblige. Last week, my wife and I preemptively reached out to our children's kindergarten and second grade teachers, inquiring if Pride lessons would be introduced in their respective classrooms. Both teachers responded and say they had no intention to discuss Pride in their classrooms, but to follow up with the library, which we did. A few days later, we then received emails from both teachers stating that there was a last minute change and that they would be conducting a read aloud from one of the board approved LGBTQI plus book lists, which we know what books are on there because I just read a few excerpts. Given this read aloud, the lesson was not a part of the diversity curriculum, which me and my husband followed closely because we want to know what's happening. And the similarities in the teachers' responses and timing made it known that this was a last minute change that clearly did not come from the teachers themselves. So where did it come from? Perhaps instead of pride, which the Oxford Dictionary defines as a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievement, consciousness of one's own dignity, students would be better served to be taught humility, modesty, servitude, and putting others first, not themselves. I'm fully aware that this meeting is on the record, that it's publicized and will be covered in a local newspaper and other media outlets. People will disagree with what I said tonight, and there is a risk of backlash in various forms. Please know that whatever comes of it, I'm speaking to you tonight, not because I want to, but because I feel like I need to. Our children are worth it. In closing, board, I implore you to stop the sexualization of our children, allowing the forced feeding of certain ideas that are not supported absolutely by the whole community. To reiterate what's already been said, these inherently complex and personal issues should be discussed in the home or with a counselor. To introduce these topics at such an early age in our kindergarten classrooms, in our K-3 population long before even the start of puberty or a romantic attraction is not only presumptuous, it's unconscionable.
Walter Weidenbacher, Center Street. I have a quick question. Is it true you don't teach the diagramming of sentences? I just want to say something. I remember reading Gertrude Stein. Yeah, I read Gertrude Stein, saying how when she was a student, she loved learning how to diagram sentences and how she did it day after day after day. I'm just saying, if you're not teaching diagramming sentences, I'm shocked. Which brings me to my second question, which is this. So you say at the beginning, and the president just read this, that these questions are answered on the website. Well, the last answer was on May 5th, which was 2 months ago. And I'm wondering if you could push that lag up to maybe 48 hours, I think would be reasonable, so that if a person asks a question, they can get an answer in time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your comments. Assuming that was a follow-up to what I said about diagram sentences, I just want to clear the record for the board. I said we don't teach cursive. We spend very little time diagramming sentences. I did not say we don't teach.
Sorry.
I know they do teach diagram sentences.
Yes. I just learned how to diagram sentences.
But I will tell you, I went to Christ the King. We did it every year from 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And Christ the King was notoriously well known for the quality of their grammar education, more so than Hattonfield. They've always had Christ the King beat on math and science. It's very important. My own kids who are smart, and some of them, 18, 19, 20 years old, they still use objective case pronouns in the subject of the sentence, like me and Mary went to school. I'm like, no, it's Mary and I went to school. And they do it because they didn't get beat into them enough. So very little time is what I said. I think we could use more time on that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon Cornetti. I live on South Hinchman. I don't have anything prepared, but I worked in sexuality and gender for 25 years. So I did want to speak up and say that I am also supportive of teaching about pride and LGBTQ and gender identity. My third grader did experience a pride lesson in the library. And when we were driving to the Haddon Heights Pride March a couple weeks ago, she told me, Mom, we learned about Stonewall, and it was a protest. And I thought it's a piece of history that I'm glad she started to learn about. Of course, she has a third grade understanding of it, and I don't expect her to have anything deeper. I do know the research around suicide rates of transgender children, and I believe that giving children the language to understand gender identity is suicide prevention. It really is, and there's a lot of research to back that up, and that being able to have language to talk about it and having accepting teachers can actually be the difference between a child dying by suicide and not. And I also wanted to say I understand that the ideas and terminology around gender identity seem to be really new, and a lot of adults are not familiar with them. As I just wanted to actually offer that they're new to us, but they've actually been around in various terminology and concepts for hundreds of years. And if you study sexuality and gender, you'll see that indigenous cultures around the entire world have concepts for gender identity that is outside the binary of male and female, which most of us were taught in biology. So these are not new concepts in the world, in history. They might be new to us and they might be confusing. If I can be a resource to parents or the school board on figuring out any of this, I'd be happy to help. Thank you.
Jennifer Cartella, 42 Walnut. I just want to tell you, and I am coming from a loving, accepting place. I think children as young as kindergarten, I think these ideologies, like I said before, the ideologies are very complex. I think that there's a time and a place for these types of discussions, and I think K-3, I know my kids, like they just, the Tooth Fairy and Santa, I think it's just conceptually, they're not there yet. So, I think that, yeah, we're in a place where these are things that are gonna be discussed and happen, of course. But I think a child's mind is at 5 years old, cannot comprehend gender fluidity and all of these concepts. I just think this is a cognitive, you gotta reach where the kids are academically and cognitively, just not there yet for those types of concepts. Family diversity is great. I mean, teaching people about different families is wonderful. Teaching kindness is great. All of those are so great. And I'm just coming from a parent with 4 young kids that I talk to on a daily basis, and I hear their conversations. They're so young and naive, and that gets so complex. Then you have to go into sexuality. I don't want to talk to my kids about sex in kindergarten. I really don't. I want to keep them as young and naive as I can as long as I can. And maybe I'm naive in thinking that, but I want to protect my children in the home. I want them to understand. Let them be kids for at least till 4th grade. I mean, and then maybe. I think there needs to be studies on when a kid can cognitively understand and conceptualize that ideology. I would say, please take that into consideration with the new sex with ed or whatever it is. And you discussed 8th grade, but I didn't hear anything about the younger kids and what that looks like for the younger kids. I've been on top of the diversity curriculum from day one since you guys sent out that list in 2020. It's nothing new. It's been out for 2 years now. I just have questions on how those texts come, and I know teachers have the autonomy to read them, but it sounded like Pride Month they had to read them when teachers said they didn't want to. I'm very confused, and I would love some insight. And I'm not just sitting here talking. I want to be involved in anything that I can be to know what's happening and how it happens. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk about the opt-out form.
Sorry,
Name
name and
I'm sorry, Jennifer Watson, 1 Virtual Drive. Wanted to kind of talk about the opt-out form because as we're looking forward to the new curriculum that's coming out for sexual education, I also kind of think we need to look backwards as to some of the things that are already our children are being exposed to. I feel for Jen. My children are older. I have one in college. I have one in high school. So I'm here really for the younger children. Children are impressionable. And I think one of the problems that we're having here is that instead of letting families talk to their children about sex and gender and all of these topics, these cultural movements, we're trying to pull them into the schools and make it one size fits all, and it's not. It's not fair to families. So in my opinion, I think Jen is spot on. I think we really need to understand what we're introducing to young, impressionable children. You can ask a child in kindergarten to 5th grade a question, and you can see in their mind that they're already thinking, am I doing the right thing? How do I feel about this? And we're bringing on topics that are adult topics. I know the other woman who spoke up said there's a lot of research about a lot of these things. There's also a lot of research about children who were too young and they transitioned or picked another gender and they regretted it when they got older. So I think what we need to do is stop creating confusion with the children, stop instilling doubt, let them be children, get the parents more involved about what books are being read, what is being taught, and we also need an opt-out form for a lot of these things because it's not fair to the families who want to deal with these topics at their own home. Thank you.
My name is Wayne Shu. We live on Center Street. I have a grandson who is about 4.5. His name is Jude. Doesn't live in this state. And if you ask Jude, who is a terrific little athlete and loves to wear girls' clothes on occasion, his sisters, are you a boy or a girl? He would say, I'm Jude. He does not declare a sex. And my daughter is at a point with him that where she's trying to allow that to be, to not have the school, through its influence and indoctrination, be able to influence his choice into something because he swims in a girl's bathing suit, dresses in his sister's clothing, and yet one of the best little players on the teams. So I just want to support the parents who are talking about it. We sometimes look at these things in life, and I apologize, this is really emotional to me. We look at these things sort of in a binary way. And it's difficult because people like you and the teachers are trying to make the right decisions and deliver the right message. But as these ladies have said, we're dealing with really moldable and impressionable play. And the things that go on and the social pressure that happens as a result of that, trying to forecast that identity, is amazing. So I hope all those things are considered. Thank you.
Even Jeff Stoner, Haddonfield Avenue. I think what we're hearing here is obviously the issues that we're talking about are incredibly complex. And the question that I want to ask really, and to bring it back to the focus of the school system, is what is the Haddonfield School District's role? And our understanding is first to focus on educating our children and to develop their intellectual abilities, understand who they are, and to prepare them for moving on. But it's primarily from, again, it's an academic element that needs to go on that the school needs to focus on. The issues we've talked about now that are related to personal family issues. Again, we're concerned when we see the school moving into these areas and saying, we, using taxpayer dollars, are now going to teach things that go beyond the academics, that go beyond the preparation, and now gets into issues that are very controversial that have many of your major Orthodox conventional religious groups will say, you know, there's teachings that are contrary to that. And families here are trying to help their kids understand from a large level who they are and what's going on, and that includes the spiritual element. And when the school is teaching this in a vacuum and not having the opportunity to say you're more than, you know, there's a whole process involved here. We're concerned, it feels like it's tipping the scales, and it does feel like it ends up being more of an indoctrination instead of a social philosophy that doesn't include many more elements that are important to families in the community. We should say there's more to this issue than just what is a social movement that's going on right now. There's more elements, and the school will not discuss those elements in this discussion. It will be a one-sided discussion on what is the current, appears to be the current social philosophy, it could be a political philosophy that's going on, and parents are being hobbled when these discussions are happening because we can't go in and say, no, there's more than that involved to these issues. So that's the concern. It feels like when the school does this, you're actually shunning us, pushing us out, and that doesn't feel good as a parent. We have our children here in the school district for a reason, because it's done a great job of educating our kids, of building a good community. I've been the recipient of that. My kids have been the recipient of that. We're very thankful for that. Now, however, we get into an area where the concentration is more on social and political and philosophical issues. That gets to the point where I'm saying, you know what, this is not what we signed up for. Now I don't feel like we have that partnership together with the school, with the administration. Now it feels like our deeply held convictions are being undermined by what's going on in the school because of a loud, well-organized, and I admit there's complex issues that need to be discussed by a group that says, this is what we want, and this is the way it needs to be. And that doesn't feel good as a parent. It doesn't feel like we're community anymore. It feels like we're being divided. So those are the concerns that I felt when we come to these issues. there's more involved, and parents have a certain role, the school board has a certain role, and we have to be careful that the school board does not, and the school, the whole curriculum does not work to undermine other important elements that parents want to build into their children. Thank you.
Anyone else? I just want to say thank you. I feel like, it takes a lot of courage to get up and speak, and you can feel everyone is very heartfelt, and, and we appreciate it. And I know how hard that is. I was moved. I felt like, I understand that these are complex issues. And I appreciate everyone sharing their story. I appreciate you sharing the struggles that you're having with situations, and that you're willing to share that with the community, because I think that people's voices are valid, and it's so hard when it comes to our children, because it is the most probably emotional thing that we do in our lives, is raise our children. So thank you very much for. Okay. Well, now we will go on to the items for Board of Ed approval. In the summer, we have just the one meeting because we tend to have spottier attendance, so with vacations. So this is both a voting session and a working session. So for governance, acceptance of the monthly suspension HIV vandalism violence report, the approval of fire and security drill report for May 2022, policy approval for Title I district-wide parent and family engagement, Title I school and parent family engagement, the postnatal accommodations for students, maintenance and repair, emergency and crisis situations, and cooperation with law enforcement agencies, and then regulations for board review, the maintenance and repair regulation, facilities maintenance, repair scheduling and accounting, and cooperation with law enforcement agencies. And lastly, the approval for the teacher coordinator for professional development. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Meg?
Second.
Steph? Okay, discussion?
I have one minor thing, and I don't know if I'm looking at this correctly, but in policy 2415.04, it looked like throughout the policy, the words parent involvement were replaced with parent and family engagement. But when you get to B1A, it says parent meeting to review and revise existing parent involvement policy by November of the current school year. So I don't know if that should also be changed to the new name of the policy.
I'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
I'm not exactly sure. I'll take a look at
Okay.
that. Thank you.
I mean, not a reason not to approve it, but it was just an editorial.
This is first reading.
Sounds like that might have been one of the, when you were discussing switching the.
Right, well, and also in
Language
those
interpreting.
policies, there's, policy and regulation, policies, it asks for some examples of things, but we don't currently have Title I funding, and so we're kind of using examples, so it may be something like that, that's what I can't remember, but, yeah. We can talk about it at our next.
What was the
So it is
section you referenced?
B1A.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we vote to accept the monthly suspension of HIV vandalism violence report, but what the hell?
I know.
That's the question, actually.
Oh,
What the hell?
Now you did say that word.
Yes, now I did say that word.
Got it. Not fair.
I don't have an answer for you, Dave. Matter of fact, we would usually be getting our HIP by the report tonight.
Yeah, but I guess they're so busy still compiling all these
Because
is.
we are still concluding investigations we're doing in July. I don't have
Worrisome.
an answer.
Fair.
We have definitely seen an uptick in cases these past couple of months. I think it's also important to note that in at least one, maybe two cases, we've seen a phenomenon that counter claims or counter reports once someone is accused and a parent files a hit report, and we're seeing a greater instance of that the accused then files counter, so it doubles numbers in some cases. And we're trying to look at our recent student SEL survey data to see if we can find some patterns that answer that question, because people theorize that the pandemic has had an impact on that. But as Chuck mentioned, we don't have an answer yet. We're still asking questions and trying to find patterns and answers.
It's mean. I mean, from a reporting and the language that you can use in these reports, people are just mean to each other. And I look at it. And it's all grades, all buildings. I mean, it's not like some bad eggs or 150 kids that go on a field and go drinking, on their last day of childhood. Hopefully some of them are going to get a rude awakening for the amount of damage it did. But it's across grades and it's across schools. It's just a mean streak of like, is it intolerance? I don't know. Are they trying to, some of the stuff you hear, that we even heard tonight, is trying to absorb ideas as manifesting in bullying and meanness. And once you can understand that somebody's different, man, it's getting drilled home against those people that are different. And shit, I'm not gonna curse anymore. I'll just call myself. But yeah, no, is it the chicken or is it the egg? I mean, I sit here thinking that something isn't being taught, and it's, I don't know if it's kindness or if it's what, man. And it's not being taught at school, and it's not being taught at home, or it would be happening.
Well, and that's what I was just about to say. I don't think the school takes 100% of the.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, but to have just an explosion of hits across the district, it's.
Well, I'm a grown woman. I asked a group of middle school boys at the pool to not do something.
And they flip you off, right?
They were merciless for 40 minutes, to the point where my 4-year-old then asked, Mommy, why are they being so rude? Which I then said something that I wasn't proud of that we don't need to go into here. But I mean, I think we all could stand to be a little bit kinder to one another. And yeah, I was coming on the heels of the HIP report that we're seeing. I was really disappointed to see a group of really young kids treating another community member that way. It would have been bad if I'm a kid. It strikes me as really something else when I'm an adult, and that's the reaction. So sorry, Dave's discomfort brought that up.
No, this is the point, unrelated. But in regards to the fire and security drills, this is just something like concerns with students. The new lockdown system has become a concern throughout high school. I was just saying that the new lockdown system has become a concern with students, teachers, parents, I'm sure. It's just, personally, I don't think it's a great system, like giving the whatever they are.
Yeah, we had talked about that. Maybe Mr. Klaus, do you want to?
Certainly. So, we put an investment, when we had our we got a grant for security, one of the things we put in place was a lockdown system. When you have a shooter in a building, it's time's everything. It's got to be seconds, not minutes. So in the past, before we had the system, what would happen is someone would call the office would make an announcement and then call the police. And so what we invested in was a system that has pull stations throughout, immediate call to 911. Every phone in the district has a one push button to activate it. And one of the features of the system is a pendant that the teachers can wear. So if they're anywhere, they can at any time put this alarm in. You are right. The pendants are poorly designed. We pulled them all back. And there's layers to the pendants, right? So the pendants are poorly designed. They should have some sort of mechanism. You can't just can't hit it by accident, because two of them were hit by accident. But there's also, in this, I'm going to say Chuck's opinion, maybe not Superintendent Klaus's opinion. I don't know that a kid should be looking at something hanging around a teacher's neck saying, "This is how dangerous our world is today." Right? So there's two sides to the pendant, that they're poorly designed and they get tripped by accident. But also we have to have this discussion, like, you talk about innocence of children. You're a first grader. What is that, Mrs. X? Well, this is in case it's so ugly out there. So I think we have that multiple layer discussion whether we want to have that again. But that's the answer. You're right. And the other side too is that. So for those of us, I'm sure you're all aware, we had a false alarm on a Friday afternoon. A teacher had his pen in his pocket. We sat down. He activated it with his keys. Didn't even realize it. Then on Monday, a teacher was trying to plug it in to charge it and activate it. So within 2 school days, you had 2 false alarms. And by the way, it's terrifying if you're in a building when you hear these noises. They're loud. They're scary. They're meant to be that way because it's that serious situation. Police are showing up within 90 seconds in the building. I mean, all those. So it worked, but it worked wrong, and we have to look at that. You're exactly right. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yep. Okay, I just want to mention the teacher coordinator for professional development position is, I'm excited for that. I think that'll be a really good, good addition for our staff. It'll be great support for them, and I think that's kudos because it's something we had talked about for a long time, so it's great. Any other comments?
Yeah, Jamie, I have one I neglected to include on the agenda, but I did provide a link for the board members for policy 241504, which is the district-wide parent and family engagement for Title I. Again, even though these policies won't be enacted because we're not a Title I district or a Title I school, recent regulations require that we have a Title I policy for every school building. So we have the district one and one for every building. I initially neglected to include the school-based ones. So I wanted to put that on there. They're all identical at this point, so there's not much distinction between the two, so we need to be in compliance. And certainly if we were to know that we were going to have a school designated as Title I, it would help us take a closer look at the implementation.
So you're saying 2415.50, there should be 5 of them?
Yes, so.
But they're all identical to that one, except for the name of the school.
Correct, so there's, what I would like to introduce, and Mike, you have to tell me the proper way to do
So this is what we do. So Dr. Priolo shared this shortly before the meeting. So just like policy 2415.50, there's 51, 52, 53, 54. So the 50, that's central school. The rest of them are identical. Just add Tatum, middle school, high school. We can just motion to add those 4 identical policies. We can all take a voice vote, all in favor, and then I can add those to the minutes.
So I'm going to make a motion to add
Title I policy, school. parent
Title I
and family
policies.
engagements for each school.
for each school. Motion. Linda?
Second.
Dave?
Argument.
Sorry, Meg?
She beat me. Yes, all in favor.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Did I make that official?
You wanted to do that.
Yeah, I did. There's never a reason to do it really during the meeting.
For all no good reason. They're all-
Yeah, no good reason. Feels official now. Okay, are we good to vote? All right, Mike, can you call roll?
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Vice President Hoagardle,
Yes.
Ms. Benecky,
Yes.
Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Essenpler,
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth,
Yes.
President Crooked.
Yes. Okay, curriculum and special education approval of field trips, conferences, travel, and overnight trips. Resolution between Camden County Special Services and the Haddonfield Board of Ed for educational services. Resolution to approve independent educational evaluation rates for the 22-23 school year per policy 2468. Resolution to approve the GCSSSD summer services on site rates, the homebound instruction rate. Resolution to provide supplemental instruction for student for up to 10 hours in core subject areas. This was back in May, to provided by Ms. Layton. Resolution between Learn Well and the Haddonfield Board of Education to provide homebound instruction for a student. Resolution to approve homebound instruction for a student to be provided by Mrs. Brown Downham. Resolution to approve the 22-23 evaluation rates for the Burlington County Special Services School District on an as-needed basis. Resolution to approve GCSSSD, also known as CRESS, to provide physical therapy services for the extended school year. Resolution to approve the contract with Dr. Michael Hodges of Physical Edge for 20 hours of help and phys ed design and coaching and consultation. Approval of the New Jersey Interscholastic Athletic Association membership for the 22-23 school year. Resolution between Hilltop Preparatory School and the Haddonfield Board of Ed to provide extended school year services for a student. Resolution, another resolution between Hilltop Preparatory School for out-of-district placement. Resolution to approve Alexis Simony, a Penn State University student, to complete observation hours during the extended school year. Resolution between Parkham College and the Haddonfield Board of Ed for clinical placement of students. Resolution to approve IXL learning contract for the 22-23 school year. Resolution to approve homebound instruction for a student to be paid at the curriculum rate. Approve Eric Nullo for K-12 mathematics professional development services for the 22-23 school year, not to exceed $48,750. Resolution between Lark School and the Haddonfield Board of Ed to provide OOD placement for a student at the cost of $59,459. Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Linda? Dave, oh, Meg, that you. Dave's doing
I
this.
better never go to
Okay,
an
so-
auction with it.
Yeah, you're done. Okay, discussion? Okay.
I was gonna ask just one silly question, maybe not silly. IXL, how do we determine what providers that we're gonna use for programs like IXL? Is there a lot of, I know there's IXL and there's, I forget how many other different there are, because my kid has like 6 of them. So how do we choose as a district what we're partnering with and what we're not?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
The IXL Learning,
Right, yeah, yes,
the there's like 4 or 5 different vendors that provide similar services. My question was how we pick IXL.
I don't know for sure. I know we've been using that since my days as director, so I don't go into that selection process.
Okay.
I know the principals.
But it's working and people are happy with it.
Very much so, yeah. And I know we use the math portion of it. I don't know,
I think we solely not.
just.
And that's evolved a lot, I have to say. That's one of those programs where like, I feel like they've evolved.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get.
I was just curious if we had any, like, do we revisit that? My kid likes that one fine,
We
but
certainly can. It's probably worth it.
Okay, Mike, can you call roll?
Mr. Seidel,
Starting with me again. Yes.
Vice President Hoger,
yes.
Ms. Benecki,
Yes.
Mr. Essenpler,
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth,
Yes. President
Crooked,
Yes, but abstain on R.
and Dr. Brown otherwise.
Yes, I was like, he's keeping me on my toes.
You said all.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Okay, personnel. Approval of new personnel, transfers, salary upgrades, mentoring, extracurricular, coaching appointments, and leaves of absences and resignations. Of the 22-23 contract for Mike Catalano as our business administrator effective July 21st through June 30th, as approved by the Camden County Superintendent. Approval of the superintendent to award employment contracts for open positions for the 22-23 school year, providing certification, criminal background check, Chapter 5 check and references are complete for the Board of Ed ratification to follow at the July, August, or September business meetings. Sorry, I got very tongue-tied on that one. Resolution to approve Vanessa Gottsfeld to provide 3 hours of supplemental reading instruction. Resolution to approve Geraldine Kelly as an extended school year, BCBA, for, from July 5th to July 28th. Resolution to approve employees for the extended school year to be paid at the curriculum rate. Resolution to approve employees as extended school year educational assistants. Resolution to approve Dina O'Connor as extended school year speech therapist to be paid at her hourly rate. Resolution to approve Colleen Carroll as extended school year occupational therapist. Resolution to approve Vanessa Gottsfeld to 66.5 hours of Tier 3 reading instruction. Resolution to approve Brianna Devlin as an EA for the 22 Summer Learning Acceleration Program. Resolution to approve Michelle Barringer to be paid 25 hours in the summer at curriculum rate for processing middle school sports physicals. Resolution to approve summer hours for a nurse to process student athlete physicals for the 22-23 school year. Resolution to approve Colleen Gaspari to be paid at curriculum rate to complete the pending HIV investigations. Resolution to approve Bill Seaman and Mary Kate Walsh to be paid the curriculum rate to switch offices over the summer. Resolution to approve Barbara Feinblum to provide compensatory educational services. Resolution to approve our bus drivers for the extended school year. Approve students and teachers to work on the summer painting crew. Resolution to pay the following teachers for Sunday training, June 15th to the 17th, 2 hours per each training session at the curriculum rate. Resolution to approve teachers to attend child study team meetings during the summer. Resolution to approve the following staff as substitute teachers and paraprofessionals for the summer program to be paid at the curriculum rate. Resolution for the 2022 facilitator summer hours for curriculum writing to be paid at the curriculum rate. Resolution to approve teachers to be paid 30 hours total to organize the drama closet and instrument space. Resolution to compensate teachers for the 22-23 school year for teaching a 6-period class. Resolution to approve the summer 2022 curriculum development hours And resolution to approve the following teachers to complete summer curriculum work to develop the K-5 scope and sequence to integrate Creating Your Thoughts program into the general ed writing curriculum. I have a motion.
Motion.
Steph?
Second.
Dave? Okay, discussion. Decided being an extremely long agenda.
I wanted to say,
Yeah,
did we stop because we got to Z? So there was like
Yeah.
no more letters?
Well-
We never
There
do.
was no AA.
Yeah, they go to
I have a real question. On N, it says for the, completing the pending HIV investigation, not to exceed 4 hours. Is that because we know where we are in the process that it should be able to?
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question about M, without a name, just a nurse. Do you need to then get a reapproval when you have a name, or is that good enough? And I'm looking at you.
Well, honestly, when it was put in, we didn't have a high school nurse. Right?
So I would say that
Shot at
I can hire this summer, so I would hire you to be approved.
Okay, because normally that would first be in
Correct.
business,
So-
finance, and
so-
recommendations, and then in
Yeah,
personnel.
once we have that done, then I can.
And so we just catch up. We'll do a catch up in July or August.
Well, C is saying we're giving Chuck the ability to hire, right?
But that's for certified positions. That's the only reason I brought it up.
We have a couple of retirements, so a few numbers of the impacted retirees. So I'm gonna talk for a moment about Eileen Duffy, who was an EA, she was a library EA, she's sitting over that circulation desk over there. She was here 15 years, nice, long nose. Knew, I think, every kid in school, wonderfully kind and wonderfully helpful. But she was in charge of the bulletin boards outside here, so when you walk in, you see those different things. So she always was in charge of those things. She took a lot of time and care. She's just a wonderful human being, and she's gonna be greatly missed. And I think you can probably attest to how much Miss Duffy is. So she's going on. She's got two or three grandchildren coming up in the next couple of months, as she told me. So she's gonna go off and have much more fun doing that than coming to school here.
Yeah, so Sandy Golden was a Tatum School EA, I believe for over 20 years. When I started as the principal at Tatum in 2005, she was already a seasoned veteran there. You just don't see that as much anymore, especially in a paraprofessional position, which has high rates of turnover. I don't care where you go. Sandy was a mainstay, not only as an educational assistant, but an educational assistant in our preschool program. She was to her last day in the district, she was on the floor, working with kids, carrying kids, picking up, helping, wiping noses when needed. She will go down as one of the most dedicated and compassionate employees who I think we've ever had. And it was a pleasure working with her, and we're happy for her that she'll be able to spend more time traveling with her.
Any other discussion? I want to just kudos on the designing the scope and sequence to integrate Creating Your Thoughts writing program. I think that's huge. Creating Your Thoughts is a more explicit writing instruction that a lot of times we'll use with special ed students, right? And now it's going to be integrated into the general education curriculum, which is a great way to help all students and to diversify the curriculum. And if they're doing the scope and sequence, then it's going to be much more seamless. And so I'm excited to see that. I think that'll be great and really like something impactful for our students.
And Framing Your Thoughts actually aligns in many ways with diagram sentences.
Yeah.
It does. It absolutely does.
It actually is grammar based to identify those things. So it does align with that as well. So
Yeah, I'm one of those grammar. Love grammar.
Me too.
I love So I'm happy to see the Creating Your Thoughts is in there.
You will get the permission in C, but how are we with vice principal at the middle school search?
we are still working on interviewing. So we got a pretty decent pool, and I think I know Hamisi's interviewed 12 or 14 people this week. He's got a few more possibles coming up. So I would say second week in July, maybe.
Yeah, we had over 30 applicants, which is really good for that position. I believe we're down to 4 now.
But most will have a 60-day notice at their current position unless it's an internal.
Correct.
So just planning for opening the school down one administrator.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, can you call roll?
Vice President Hoagland.
Yes.
Ms. Bedecki.
Yes.
Dr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Essenpler.
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth.
Yes.
Mr. Seidel.
Yes.
President Crooked.
Yes. Okay, approval of business and finance recommendations. Approve Capar and Scatcherd Law Firm as the solicitor for the Board of Education. Approve Weiland, Goldman, and Spitzer to serve as bond counsel for the Board of Education. Approve Inverso and Stewart LLC as the auditor for the Board of Education these are all for the 22-23 school year. Approve Camden County Educational Services Commission as provider of PL 192 to 193 services. Approve to participate in the Camden County Cooperative Pricing System for school supplies. Approve Omni Financial Group to provide 403B administration services. Appoint NW Financial Group as the district financial advisor. Approve to participate in the Somerset County Cooperative Pricing System. Approval to authorize the superintendent and school business administrator to pay bills during the summer of 22. Authorize the school business administrator to close out the petty cash account as of June 30th, 22, and to open the approved 22-23 petty cash account as of July 1st, 22. Approval of educational data services to maintain licensing to participate in the New Jersey Cooperative Bid Maintenance Program. Appoint Brown and Brown Benefit Advisors as the district benefit advisor, continue to participate in the Public Employer Trust for the 22-23 school year. Approve report of award contracts. Approve the submission of the 22-23 ESEA grant application. Approve transfer of current year anticipated surplus reserves. Approval of the following tuition reimbursements to be paid. Approval of the following tuition reimbursements to be paid to Hamisi. Previous ones were Jonathan Maxon. The Haddonfield Board of Education approves and authorizes following for construction of the toilet room at Central.
Also,
Right? That's what I'm thinking. That's not reading. Wait, do I have to read
It
it?
was approval for the bid that went out.
That's staying there regardless. So
Okay.
the awards of the bids would have been on here also. But this is doing things by the book and submitting
Approval.
specification and submissions to the Office of School Facilities with the Department of Education.
Okay, so I will
Still need that.
abbreviate this
Still-
since it's
still
not
need
really
that.
gonna be useful anyway. So for the toilet room renovations.
Well, they'll be able to give us opinion on how to rescope it for going out again. Yeah.
Approval of licensee contract with Musical Theater International Broadway for Xanadu Junior. Approval of license agreement with Play Scripts, the Greek mythology. Olympia Gonza for the musical play. Approval of the contract with Educational Travel Tours for the senior class trip. Approve the settlement agreement and release for 2 employees. Approval directing the distribution of the Haddonfield Board of Education net surplus to apply the board's 22-23 premium in the fund fiscal year. Payment of bills, budget transfers, board secretary's report, and the cash summary report. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Dave? Greg? Discussion.
This is only slightly funny. Xanadu Junior.
I know.
Involve roller skating, and do we have the insurance for it?
I thought of the same thing, I was like, wow, do you know what Xanadu is? It's this like, was it 80s?
Oh, it's awful movie.
Yeah, it's
It's
just,
Olivia Newton-John at her finest.
yeah,
Roller skating.
on roller skates. Do you know it?
So I didn't know if the show involved roller skating.
I don't know.
There's a lot of, the music is very, I think I have the LP.
I just wanted the guy's hair.
Okay,
It's late.
any comments on any of this?
Well, now we can go to AA.
Yeah, yeah, all right. Okay, Mike, can you call roll?
Ms. Benecki,
Yes.
Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Assenblair,
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Vice President Hoger,
Yes.
President Crooked.
Yes. Approval of the following minutes, the regular meeting for May 12th, 22, executive session, May 12th, 22, regular meeting, May 19th, 22. Motion,
Motion.
Second.
Steph, Dave. Discussion? Okay, Mike, can you call roll?
Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Assenblair,
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Vice President Hoger,
Yes.
Ms. Benecki,
Yes.
President Crooked.
I'll abstain from A and B, yes on C. Okay, at this time, we can take public comments on non-agenda items.
Hi, my name is Mary Burke. I live on Linden Avenue. My children all graduated from Hattonfield School quite a while ago. But when my son was in first grade, back in 2002, he came home and he told me that he was learning about crack cocaine and marijuana in health, and I pulled him out of health. So he didn't do any health in the elementary school. So my question is that an option for parents today? If they don't want their children at all to be exposed to anything because there seems to be a lack of transparency, and if they're concerned, do they have that ability to do that? Thank you.
Jeff Center, Avenue 11. And I don't know if this is appropriate. It's really a question trying to understand more with the distribution of grades in the school. I've been told, and I don't know how to confirm, is whether students in the high school are being issued grades lower than a 60 or not. Is there a policy that students will not be issued a failing or a grade below 60? And I think the second question I'd like to understand more about, I don't know where to go to, would be, my understanding is at graduation, I heard that approximately 40% of the graduating students had A averages this year. I don't know exactly, but just to understand that, because it seemed to me that would be just concerned that there is a grade inflation or a doctrine that doesn't go on, that we're, again, if those are the cases, are we moving away from truly merit and perhaps getting into a point where we're giving out letters that people like to see, but it doesn't necessarily indicate where within the true performance scale they really are. So again, that is something I don't know where to go on this. I've heard these things. I know there have been discussions about changing the scale from 92 to 90. And as a parent who is concerned about continuing the strong reputation of Hattonfield as they go into schools, I'm concerned that if there appears to be, it just gets to be easier, I think it does harm to all of our students if there's not actually something, a system that says there's, you'll be graded honestly as opposed to compressing it into a scale that makes you feel good, but really doesn't show you how well you've done relative to everyone. So, again, if that information is out there, I don't know how I can get access to those things, but that's just something I'm curious about. So, if you could guide me to resources, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I ask you one question, Jeff, just to clarify? When you say distribute, like when you're talking about no less than a 60, do you mean for an average grade or a class grade?
And that's what I'm trying to understand.
Oh,
What it
okay.
was
So
is it for final grade, do they not give out a below 60 and F? Do they not do that as a matter of policy? I don't know what that is.
I'll get that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
That's what I understand. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to items for future board consideration.
I would like to make sure that the July agenda isn't anything like this, since we will not be here.
Right, yeah.
It's contract season.
I know, I know. It was a long one.
And I had to say Xanadu. I don't know, this might have been worth it just because I got to say Xanadu at the meeting, and I knew how to pronounce it.
Yes.
That was a win.
All right. All right, anything for, we have our retreat, don't forget, coming up. You have your brochure that Linda set up, that in your assignment, it's in there, you literally get 3 minutes, so we just might cut to the chase when you're doing, presenting in chapters, but you
So
only
no
get 3
PowerPoint?
minutes, so if you can do it in 3 minutes. My first year, I gave a handout, and I remember Adam's like, you made a handout, I'm like,
Now, who's gonna do the introduction?
And that's
Now
our
that
requirement.
Jenny's not here.
I do.
Oh, no, she'll be there.
Oh, you'll be for the retreat,
I'll
not
be
for the
there for the
meeting.
retreat, I won't be here for that meeting.
Actually, I do want to say one thing.
Oh, I do, can I just clarify? So the retreat is not an action meeting, we will not be voting on it.
No.
Just to let the public know that there are 2 meetings in July.
Yeah.
There's the action meeting, and then there will be the retreat, which is not an action.
Which is really a retreat.
Which is really,
We're talking about.
but it's still public, it's just a
Yeah,
retreat.
it's still public, yeah, and it's still here, technically, I think we're gonna do a little tour.
Little
but-
tour first, then we'll see the building.
Where are we gonna start here for the tour?
We'll start here.
Yeah, we'll meet here, because we have to open the meeting like normal,
Okay.
so it's still, and then I guess, we can bring people along with us, I'm gonna feel like it's one of those,
For anyone that comes late, like.
yeah, it's gonna be like, do you ever see, well, on TV shows and Law and Order and stuff, when they take people to look at the crime scene and like, everybody's like following the whole jury, not that I probably that.
Okay, I had a lighter
Someone
version of
cut
like
that.
the sightseeing tour.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, sorry. Lynn.
No, that's okay. I debated whether I want to say this, but I am going to say this. Several years ago, Adam talked to me about running for the board. And one of the things that he said to me is that you get to hand your child the torch. And I got to do that this week, and it was such an incredibly special moment. I can't even begin to tell you. And that night I thanked Adam because he gave that moment to me, and I just want to publicly thank him.
Okay, someone make a motion to close the meeting?
to adjourn.
Meg? And Steph's getting this one, Megan Steph.
That's the only other good reason.
All right.
Oh, my gosh.